Welcome in to the money vehicle movement. This is where I get to live my dream. My name is Jedidiah Collins, and sure, we're going to go through a little of my story because to understand the message, you got to meet the messenger. And I am just the first messenger. As our journey continues, my hope is you become a messenger as well. This podcast, this style is provided by Money Vehicle, where we're really trying to do two things: build an engaging curriculum for students and an easy to use program for teachers. As we connect these thoughts, we thought, what way to stay current, what way to stay connected to the curriculum, and what way to add a cool atmosphere of new, exciting guests? Then a podcast. So, this podcast is going to show and share exactly what I love. We are going to connect the money mindset with the tangible actions you are going to need to take to be successful in your financial journey. The only thing I can do better than most is talk to people about money. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to have people on, we're going to discuss the curriculum, we're going to look at what's going on in the world today, all trying to connect the dots for you, the student, to understand and speak this language of money. Now, if we are in the right place at the right time, which I feel we are, as we look around, we see all of these states passing mandates requiring financial literacy for high school graduation. We're going to be able to look at this and say, Money Vehicle is here. How can we bring it to you? How can we make the message better? That door of welcoming feedback will always be open. And the reality is, we have already failed endless times. I personally, us as a company. So nothing you say is going to stop us from delivering and continuing to drive on this passion. So, who am I and why does it seem like I could be somebody who starts this movement, who needs endless support, team, and you to make it come to fruition and real? I get asked one question as a validation, as a badge of honor. Well, how many NFL players are you teaching today? I look at 2023, the year we are just ending and looking at in our rear view, and Money Vehicle is delivered to 500 NFL players. Let me say that again. Last year in 2023, Money Vehicle delivered to 500 NFL players. Going through the list of teams, you look at the Colts, the Falcons, the Cardinals, the Saints, the Jets, the Rams, the Lions, and the hometown team today, the Seahawks. Now, I look at just who I got called and cut by. I get to go back into the New Orleans Saints, who changed my life. I get to go to the Detroit Lions. I get to experience walking back in these doors and looking at these men and saying, I'm here to do one thing: teach you the language of money. These 500 athletes have been approached with objective guidance, with education and knowledge, all in the hopes that they leave speaking this language and that they begin to speak this language into their communities. That is exactly what we're going to be doing here on this session. So, how do we tie these dots together? Who is going to be? Let me spend a few minutes explaining how I got here, why I'm sitting in front of you today, because it doesn't make sense if we don't start there. It starts 15 years ago, back in 2008. I was a rookie in the NFL playing for the Cleveland Browns. I was actually at an extended stay apartment, and I got my first big active game check. Previously on the practice squads, being cut, being tossed around, I finally got activated by the Cleveland Browns, and I got that envelope. This was before direct deposit, which, let me digress there for just a moment. I was in the buildings. I was in the cars. I saw the checks, the envelopes of $50,000, $100,000 checks go uncashed, go undeposited, until we started to realize how much that vital automation, that vital resource was to players like myself in the National Football League. If you just think about the interest topic we'll discuss more and more, being charged on the amount of money that was uncashed for a day, a week, a month, that is where the NFL needed to change in support of its players. But back to my story. I look at 2008, I look at that first paycheck, I look at the woman, the girl at the time sitting next to me and thinking that envelope, before I even opened it, I had already spent every dime of that paycheck. This woman was about to become my fiance, and I took that first check and I bought an engagement ring. Yes, cute story. Yes, 15 years later, she's still my wife and my best investment ever. But I look back at that moment and I say, that was a poor financial habit. That was a learning lesson for me. That same year, coincidentally, I think not, you'll see a lot of stars aligning in this journey of the money vehicle movement. But in that same year, ESPN came out with a documentary called Broke. ESPN 30 for 30 Broke. And it shared a statistic that may be argued today. 70% of professional athletes, very soon after they're retired, 3, 4, 5 years after they retire from their professional athleticism, go broke. 70% fall on financial hardships and don't have anything to show from their career. I look at this, I remember the recruiting letters, the messages. One in however many thousands get to go and play college sports. I look at it and then say, of college athletes, how few get the opportunity? 1% get the opportunity to go professional. And of this 1%, of the 1%, 70% is starting to go broke. That number, that idea, that thing shook me, shocked me, and awoke me to just how financially illiterate I was. Take that first check and you see it, you understand it, and you start to say, he did not use that money. Yes, again, good investment, but to this day, very poor financial habit to make money and spend it in the same day. So I went into Borders bookstores. I started to look and research the personal finance aisles. I saw the Susie Ormans, the Dave Ramseys, the Robert Kiyosaki's. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was the first that really hooked and changed, as it has millions. But even in those books, I started to question and look around. And I said, what about for somebody just starting? What about for a high school level? Where is this program? As I was going on my journey, I started to ask my brothers, very educated. One was at Berkeley getting a master's in engineering, another at Harvard Law School. Harvard Law School. And as I asked my more educated brothers, well, what am I supposed to be doing with this money? They had more questions than answers. I started to go down this journey, started to read these books, get a little knowledge and information. And by the time I started answering some of their questions, I realized there was a lot more to this program. Let me begin by saying I'm living a dream. What do I mean by that? 15 years ago, I wrote in a journal that I want to come back and teach a basics of money class to NFL players like me. Now, in 2023, I was able to teach 10 different teams and almost 500 NFL players the language of money. Looking back on the teams and the visits that I got to take just in this year alone, I got to visit the Indianapolis Colts, the Atlanta Falcons, the Arizona Cardinals, the Seattle Seahawks, the New Orleans Saints, the New York Jets, the Los Angeles Rams, the Detroit Lions, and of course, the National Football League's Players Association, who we have become partners with because this message is so needed. And as I look at a hundred players, what was the single message that I wanted to let me begin by saying I am living my dream. What do I mean by that? Well, 15 years ago, I wrote in my journal that I wanted to come back and teach a basics of money class to NFL players like me. And in 2023, 15 years after I wrote that, I taught almost 500 NFL players. That is the beauty and the power in writing out your dreams and your goals, and something we are going to challenge you to do throughout this Money Vehicle program. But as I look back at my journey at 2023, I look back at the teams that I got to visit: the Colts, the Falcons, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the Saints, the Jets, the Rams, the Lions, the Texans. I look at the message. I was able to stand in front of them and say objective advice, free education. I don't have anything to sell you. All I want to do while I'm here is get you to speak this language of money. I look at the messages that we delivered on topics, all of which we cover in the Money Vehicle curriculum, and I understand one main lesson, one takeaway of talking to 500 professional athletes. It's not the how much you make. Let me say that again. It is not what you make. It is what you make work. Now, for those that know me, know I deal with an imposter syndrome. Yes, I'm obsessed and consumed with Money Vehicle, but I still question, am I the right person? Am I the person that's going to create one of the first financial literacy curriculums to span the country and be delivered in schools? I challenge and question if I am that person. And so that imposter syndrome is real. As you meet me, I want to be as real as I can with you. But today I want to share that my confidence continues to grow and that this calling, this passion, this obsession is a real one. And I look and I see the world and the message that I'm delivering. And I will confidently say today, there is no one in the world better suited than me to speak to professional athletes as their money coach. Here's the catch: that dream I had in 2008, that dream has changed. Even though I could not be more proud and excited about what I am doing for that audience, NFL players, I have a new vision that has become my passion and, as I mentioned, my obsession. Teach 1 million students how to speak the language of money. Which brings us together today and this podcast. Welcome into the Money Vehicle movement, this podcast where our mission is to build an engaging program for students and an easy to use curriculum for teachers. With our Money Vehicle mission in mind, we are starting this podcast with the simple goal of making money cooler for our students. Let me say that again. The purpose of this podcast is to make money cooler to you. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to try to connect what is happening in the real world, current events, with maybe some of my NFL ties or influencer guests, and bring this message into your classroom, into classrooms across the country, and create the conversation, but do so with a ping of curiosity, a ping of coolness, a fairy dust of fun. So, how did we get here? Let me begin by telling you my story. And I want to say it once so I get to focus the rest of these podcasts, the rest of these messages to you and centered around you. But we got to start back in that 2008, back as my journey began when I got my first paycheck. I was sitting in a extended stay apartment in Cleveland, Ohio, and I got my first envelope. I looked at that and I said, I had just completed my first week as an active NFL player. That big payday game day check was here. And even before I opened the envelope, I knew I had spent every dime of the money that was in that folder. I looked at this woman sitting next to me who was about to become my fiance, and I said, I'm taking all of this and buying an engagement ring. Now, 15 years later, cute story, good investment. She is still my beautiful bride. But I look at that moment and I look at what it taught me. It taught me that I did not speak the language of money. I did not understand how these things work. I did not have a plan to go about this paycheck. And it showed me just how financially illiterate I was. The stars aligning, and we'll see the stars align several times in this money vehicle journey. The stars aligning, ESPN came out with a broke documentary, one of their 30 for 30 spotlights, saying 70% of professional athletes go broke after they're done playing. Argue the statistics, all the details. The message was, I remember being the high school athlete, getting the recruiting letter that says 1% of high school players get to go play college. Being a college athlete, looking at professional athletes and knowing 1% of college athletes get to go play professional. And then as a professional athlete, knowing the odds of making it and seeing that most aren't walking away from this game with the dream that we were all chasing. That reality woke me up as a no-name player, an undrafted guy getting cut a dozen times. I was never going to be the mega money millionaire guy. So how was I going to capture this dream? How was I going to become one of those 30%? That mindset, that idea, that message, become a 30%er was something I said to myself from that day in 2008 on. I started to go to bookstores, Borders, sit and read, go down the personal finance aisle, find the Susie Ormans, the Dave Ramseys, the Robert Kiyosaki's. Rich Dad, Poor Dad changed my life as it has millions of others. But even in there, I started to ask and question, what about for the beginner? What about for the plan? What am I supposed to go do? This search, this question changed me into asking. My brothers, very highly educated, Harvard Law School, master's in engineering at Berkeley. Maybe one of them understood. Maybe they were teaching them there. I finally found a mentor who said, Jed, I can feed you fish. I can give you it all day long, but if you really want to speak this, you got to learn to fish for yourself. He challenged me in my off seasons during the NFL to become a certified financial planner, a CFP, which at the time I had no idea what that even meant. But that was what I started in 2010. 2010, I began the CFP process and began each offseason to study for and take one of those exams, even hiding my study materials within my NFL playbook at times when we would go on road games. Finally, in 2013, as my knowledge base grew, I started to look and I started to ask, I know the problem. I was the problem. How can I go out and help? 10 years ago, I started walking into high school, college, companies, and speaking this language. And I tried to start sharing all of the information that I started to learn. And I quickly realized you can't teach everybody everything in an hour. You need to simplify, you need to translate, you need to tell and entertain people as you speak this language of money. So I started to go out more and more, get more and more reps until the game was done with me. And it was 2015 where I walked into the world of wealth management, working at a company called Brighton Jones. It was an amazing experience, side by side with the best in the business, speaking the language on a daily basis and learning every step of the way. How do the wealthy handle their paychecks? How do they set up their plan? What are the hazards and the mistakes that they avoid that so many of us fall into? So as I looked at that, I started to see and say, my knowledge, my experience is still growing. And in 2018, I started to look at that question I asked myself, where is the actionable plan for a high schooler? How do I take all the things that I'm learning for the wealthy, for the big dollars, and simplify it down to somebody getting their first paycheck and the actions that they can go take? In 2018, I started writing Your Money Vehicle, a book that was meant for that beginner and meant to get them 10 steps down the road. And I also met a man named Teague Christensen who put a funny bug in my ear. He said, Jed, I think you're going to teach and empower 1 million people. And so where my dream changed, how I started to shift was that voice, Teague's voice in my head. How do I begin to teach 1 million people? I started to realize I couldn't do it being a wealth advisor. I couldn't do it walking in and out of workshops. And so I started to see this entrepreneurial spirit grow in me. And although I was terrified, I realized failure at this journey would be a short, quick answer. Regretting never having tried would be something I would have to live with the rest of my life. So, January 1st of 2020, my entrepreneurial badge started to beat, and I began Money Vehicle, trying to build an entire business around this idea of financial education. Can I build a passion into a company? And I will say, a few months after it began, it all come crashing down with COVID starting and all income being taken away, and really allowing me to see the vision even clearer. Let me say that again. COVID crushed my business, crushed my income, but it allowed me to focus. That time we all had, I spent consuming, absorbing, and redefining what this company was going to be. In 2021, I said, how do I go out and start to validate the system that I have? I needed students. So I started to get the program virtually into schools. I started to become an adjunct professor at my alumni, Washington State, and I started to look at and continue to question, what are the students saying? How do I maximize this message? With each feedback, with each student, I started to learn more and more. And after hundreds, thousands of students going through, I get to say today in 2024, Money Vehicle is an education technology company. Words an old football player never thought he would be the owner of. And as we are a nationwide financial literacy curriculum, I get to again say, I am living my dream. This idea that I started and had so many teammates, so many subject matter experts, so many people add their 2 cents into is becoming a reality. The last question I want to start as I kick off this journey, because it will be a journey that we go on, ups and downs. I want to end with why I think Jedidiah just might be the right person. My dad invented this game called King for a Day. We were a basketball family, despite the football. We were a basketball family, and we played one-on-one basketball with me and my brothers. The winner was announced king for the day, and he got to boss the other two brothers around. Well, being the youngest brother, I didn't win very much. As a matter of fact, I remember very vividly winning twice in the 1,000 times we played king for a day. And you will know, if you're only going to win king once or twice, you should be a gracious king, because soon the king will be replaced. But as I looked at this journey, as I looked at this game and how it's prepared me for sports, education, entrepreneurialism, it has given me the gift of dealing with failure. Dealing with failure is paramount for an entrepreneur. But the real reason I am here, the real reason I can stand and am still standing after the many, many failures I've been through in Money Vehicle, it has been years of trying to get to this point, to get in front of you. It has been years of failure. The why I am still here is because no one else has been as focused on financial literacy going into high schools over the past 10 years than me. No one else is as obsessed with this subject, with empowering you to use these tools, to use your money, and to create a plan and a program that will take you to financial freedom. This has been a decade, a 15-year journey. And I get to sit in front of you today and say, you are the Money Vehicle movement. Yes, I have had this passion, but my hope is just an ounce of that passion shares and shifts to you, to where you bring this message into your community and into your world. Some will say now, hey, Money Vehicle, Jed, you're at the right place at the right time. These states making these mandates, these laws, how did you run and create this so fast? I hope you see that this is not a quick fix. This is not something we just poof and jumped on. I hope you see that this is something that has been designed to entertain, to engage, to empower you to act. I am the messenger of money vehicle. How we got here was because I am confident enough to believe it could happen. I am disciplined enough to continually improve this every day, and I am passionate enough to fail. Where we will go from here, that's going to be up to you. Welcome to the Money Vehicle Movement.